like to call this meeting to order. I'd like to call this meeting to order. We'll begin with a moment of personal reflection. Councilor Gardner, would you please lead us in the singing of our national anthem?
O Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all of us command. Car ton bras sait porter l'épée, il sait porter la croix. Ton histoire est une épopée des plus brillants exploits. God keep our land glorious and free. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Thank you. We acknowledge that we are gathered on the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee peoples, the Mohawks of Akwesasne, the original keepers of this land. As settlers, we are grateful for the opportunity to meet here, and we thank all the generations of people who have taken care of this land for thousands of years. Roll call, please, Madam Clerk.
Mayor Justin Towndale.
Present.
Councillors Claude McIntosh.
Present.
Dean Hollingsworth.
Present.
Modeste Dupel.
Present.
Sarah Good.
Present.
Caroline Hébert.
Présente.
Councillors Elaine McDonald.
Present.
Sid Gardner.
Here.
Denis Sabourin.
Present.
Todd Bennett.
Here.
And Fran Gunjo.
Are there any additions, deletions, or amendments to the agenda? Councillor McIntosh.
Can I pull bylaw 9? Just a couple of questions about it.
Councillor Gardner.
I'd like to pull number 3 from consent, please. Thank you.
Councillor Gunjo.
I would like to pull consent 5.
Any further amendments? Seeing none, can I have a motion to adopt the agenda as amended, please? Councillor Dupel, seconder Councillor Gardner. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Any disclosures of interest? Councillor Hebert.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will declare conflict of interest for communication report number 2, the town hall meeting regarding the former Bob Turner location. The Social Development Council, which is my employer, is the project manager on an initiative that is proposing a use for that space.
Thank you. Any further disclosures of interest? Okay, seeing none. Can I have a motion to go to committee of the whole, please? Councillor McDonald, Councillor Gardner, all in favor? I'm going to ask that again. All in favor, please? Thank you. Okay, a motion to adopt the minutes from the meeting of April 24th. Councillor McDonald, seconder. Councillor Bennett, all in favor? Carried. Thank you. Presentations?
We have none this evening, Mr. Mayor, but we do have a delegation by your Arts Council. In here to present is Mr. Richard Salem, accompanied by Neil Carrier, I believe.
Mr. Carrier is not here.
Along with the council?
Richard Salem wants to be known.
Mr. Salem, if I could just get you to press the little man or the little person button, and there you go, you've got a mic.
May I sit?
Yes,
Please.
Welcome to council, Mr. Salem.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We are your Arts Council, Cornwall and the counties. We are a regional arts council formed from a recommendation in the 2009 Culturescape report. We were formed in 2012 as a adjunct of the Community Development Corporation, and we formed a committee through that organization and then declared our independence in 2014. We've been serving the community since then. I brought a PowerPoint presentation, but the PowerPoint presentation is a, excuse me, a summary of this document that I also submitted with the presentation, which goes into much more detail. It is a proposal for a memorandum of understanding with the City of Cornwall as to services that we can render. So just by way of background, most of that I've given you. Our mission is to be a regional arts council serving Cornwall, Akwesasne, and the United Counties, and that we are to be a resource for the visual, performing, and literary arts sector. Our global ends statement is that artists are successful. And you can see on the first page of the document that that's broken down much farther into a variety of statements about artists being successful, and that whatever we do with the objective of it being cost effective. If we could move to the next slide. So as I said, we're proposing to enter into a multi-year memorandum of understanding or service agreement with the City of Cornwall, where we would have a sum of $25,000 a year awarded to us, and we would produce the events and programming that we have been producing since 2012. I wanted to touch on the events. The four main events that I'll be discussing today, certainly not what we're limited to doing, are the Apples and Art Studio Tour, which happens in September every year, the last full weekend of September. The Cornwall Art Walk, which is coming up June 23rd. The Cornwall Art Hive, which has events throughout the year all over the city. And the Spectacle Art Event Calendar, which we publish digitally on our website and through our social media feeds. The first event I'd like to discuss is the Apples and Art Studio Tour. The Apples and Art Studio Tour was started 32 years ago, and we were not involved. We took over in 2014, and the information I have, if we can go to the next slide, sorry. The information in this table goes back to when we took over in 2014. As you can see, under our guidance, we have had progressive years of significant growth in almost every category. The only year we didn't see growth was COVID, 2021. We didn't have an event in 2020 again because of COVID, but we're counting it anyway because it's easier that way. Last year, 2022, was one of our most successful years. We had 81 participating artists, 44 locations. We sold, or the artists sold $76,000 worth of art during the 2 days. There was also a significant amount of commissions as a result of the tour. And we saw studio attendees of 6,652 in number. Those are studio visits, not discrete visitors. And we had studios all the way from Morrisburg to Alexandria. This year, we've just opened up registration for the artists. We already have a significant contingent who have registered, but they have until May 31st, so we don't know how many people or how many sites we're going to have. We do know there's a lot of interest. A lot of the people sitting behind me are members of or artists who participate in the Apples and Art Studio Tour, and they're here to show their support tonight. The next event I'd like to talk about, go ahead and go to the next slide, is the Cornwall Art Walk. Cornwall Art Walk is basically a street party that we throw in downtown Cornwall, the objective of which is to help Cornwall's artists to exhibit their crafts, their wares, and to celebrate downtown Cornwall as a new art sector. We had 7,500 people attend the two events last year. It was quite successful. We had a huge social media reach. It was very popular with locals. We had people from all over the place coming to see it. This year we anticipate, with one event being held this year, we anticipate at least 5,000 attendees. We're expecting 60 vendors. We've got a number of music acts, performance acts. We've got hoop dancers and sky hoop people, and it's just going to be a glorious, wonderful illustration of what a fantastic arts resource Cornwall is. Again, the social media reach was huge. All of that's detailed in this report. The next slide. Yes, so 2022 saw $35,000 in vendor sales. Downtown businesses reported an average 20% increase in sales during the events. We paid out $20,000 to local musicians and performers. Social media reached 75,000 people, and all of the feedback was incredibly positive. Again, we have people signing up already. We expect to have to turn people away. The response is that significant. Okay, Cornwall Art Hive. The Cornwall Art Hive was brought to us by Yafa Gawali. She had experienced the International Art Hive movement in Montreal, and when she moved here, she brought that concept with her. It has been established here as a standing committee of YAC, as are the other organizations that I've discussed, or the other events that I've discussed. With YAC's assistance and funding, we have secured grants, and we have established events at the Agape Center, at Lamoureux Park, at the Cornwall Public Library, at the Newcomer Center. We're branching out. We've had them at the mall. They're very, very, very popular. Again, huge social media reach, painting Cornwall as a fun and wonderful place to be. The concept behind the Art Hive is twofold. The first program is Arts for All, which is just an art free-for-all where we come with art supplies to a public venue of some kind, be it Lamoureux Park or Cornwall Square or the library, and people just come and they do art together. Generally speaking, we have at least one artist there who is sort of leading things, but it's not like it's a workshop or a themed thing. It's just a place of acceptance and gathering where people come together and be creative. Again, very popular, very significant social media reach, very positive light being cast on Cornwall. The last thing I want to discuss, if we could move to the next slide, is, oh, we're already there, sorry. The Spectacle Art Event Calendar. Again, this is a service that we are producing, which lists every art-related event in SDNG for free. It is one of the best curated lists of events happening in the area. It's delivered to 1,000 screens every month. It is published on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. It has proved to be very popular. And what it does is it shows people what's going on. They can, if there's links to ticketing, they can pick on the event and acquire a ticket through there. We have an e-blast that goes out once a week. And as I said, we are automatically publishing the events on all of our social media feeds. And again, very broad social media reach through those social media channels. Those are the main events that we're producing. We have other events that we haven't produced, that we haven't produced in a while, I should say, such as Conquer the Canvas. That kind of got canceled because of COVID, and we just haven't had the people to stage it again, but we would like to in the future. Conquer the Canvas was a very popular arts competition where we pitted artists against each other, and the public got to vote which their favorite paintings were. Basically, the artists had 20 minutes to complete an 18 by 24 canvas, and we had 600 people come out, buy tickets, and bid on the paintings, and it was a wonderful party. We haven't done that in the last couple of years. We aren't going to do that this year, but we hope to do it in the future. Other arts programs that YAC is responsible for is the Arts Group Incubator. The Arts Group Incubator is a standing committee process where groups can assume our governance, our insurance, our banking and accounting, our mentoring, so that they can create whatever events they're trying to create at a minimal cost. Groups that have taken advantage of that are Focus Art, for example. Focus Art is a special case because they're a very independent artist guild that's been around for a very, very long time. But they decided to become a standing committee of YAC because rather than spending $800 an event for insurance, this is their public exhibition events that they have basically once a season, they're able to, as a standing committee, take advantage of our existing insurance. It allows them to produce more events in a year and not have to worry about the cost of that insurance. It's covered under YAC's standing committee program. Another example of a standing committee is the Priest's Mill Arts Center in Alexandria, who were a standing committee for 3 years. When they came on board, they had absolutely no money. The staff was all volunteer. And after 3 years under our tutelage, they were able to achieve their independence. They now have a full-time gallery manager and several full-time instructors on staff. And artists in Alexandria and around the area are selling their art through that art center. Excuse me. We have a counseling and mentoring program. We have people coming to us all the time asking us what they should do and how they should do it. And we're happy to help them identify what's expected of them. Resources, we have, simple things from easels to software. People might need Adobe Photoshop or something to put together a poster. We can help them do that. We can help them identify grant resources. We can help them apply for those grants. We can connect them with other artists, with other guilds in their discipline, so that they can meet other artists and expand their circles. We have our established social media. The Spectacle Art Event calendar, again, reaches about 1,000 screens a month. So anybody who has an event is able to advertise, an art-related event, is able to advertise on the Spectacle and have it reach a very broad audience. And then artists and arts group advocacy. We sit on a variety of committees, as well as our board members, and help coordinate the arts effort across the community. Next slide, please. I've just discussed all that. Keep going. Arts group and arts group advocacy. All right, the bottom line. So, if we look at the main 4 events, We've got the Apples and Art Studio Tour. Economic benefit in 2022, just during the two-day event, was $96,500 worth of art sold. The spectacle, there's a rubric of how we came to this number, but basically we thought through the advertising we were doing, the number of screens we were hitting, that we were adding about $3,000 a month in ticket sales through that social media reach. So we've estimated that at $36,000. Cornwall Art Walk, $55,000 worth of art was sold during the events last year. We anticipate a similar number this year. Committee input, we valued at $10,000. So that's around $200,000, basically an eightfold return on the $25,000 investment a year we're asking council for. And TREAM, the economic impact model that the Ministry of Tourism, or sorry, I forget which ministry it is, Sports and Recreation. They put it together. This is the numbers that they estimate. The cash value is literally that, the cash that the events generate directly. We have the artist report to us. This includes the hotel stays, the value of the hotel stays, the value of the restaurant visits, the value of the gasoline purchased, the value of the gas and coffee purchased. That's why these numbers are significantly higher. And based on the number of visitors, which we established by survey, these are the numbers that the economic tool provided by the ministry suggests. So the point is an eightfold at least return on investment for what we're asking. And it's not up there because it wouldn't fit, but it's in the report that I sent. There's a budget showing how that money is spent, what percentage of what is what. And if we can move to the next slide. Thank you for your time. I'm here to answer your questions at your request.
Thank you. Before I get to questions, can I get a motion on the floor for the recommendation? Councillor Bennett, Councillor Hubert. Questions, Councillor Hollingsworth.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you for the presentation. Just as a little caveat, I appreciate you attaching a budget. It's kind of nice to see where it's all kind of playing out. Two quick questions. First of all, do you have, like, are there members as part of your Arts Council? Could I be a member if I wanted to?
Yes, I'm supposed to say through you, Mr. Mayor.
That's the official one.
Councillor Hollingsworth. Yes, membership to your Arts Council is free. We have 223 members at this point in time. The membership becomes involved during the annual general meeting. And beyond that, there really isn't much for a member to do other than pay attention to what we're doing and volunteer as needed.
Okay. The second question is, so I know that based on the budget here, city pays for 25,000. There's an additional 13,000 from, make sure I get this number right, Tourism Development Corp, and then the $1,500 from SDNG Tourism. Does the county's council fund any of this? Because I know you had made reference to it being a regional arts kind of council or arts program. So do they provide? No biggie.
It had to happen. I don't have enough Kleenex here. All right, so again, thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor.
Collect your thoughts. It's no biggie. I'll get you all rattled here. So, question?
Yes, the question is,
Counties provide any funding?
we applied for many, many years, individually to each township and globally to their Council of Townships. And the only thing they were interested in funding was Apples and Art. So it became a matter of what do I have time to do? It became a situation where it just wasn't worth the effort to make the application. We can count on them for apples and art. But beyond that, we have not received any funding from that
Okay.
vector.
That's all I need to know. Thank you, Worship. Thank you.
Councillor McIntosh.
Thank you. I'm going to pick up where Dean left off with the regional, being a regional arts center, mainly funded by the city of Cornwall, even though we have fewer people living here than they do in the counties. You talked about the Apple, I think it was Apple Arts, 44 locations.
Yes.
How many would be in the city and how many would be outside the city?
About half of, sorry, again, through you, Mr. Mayor. About half of them were in Cornwall, and about half outside. And a number of regional artists would come into town to do their display. But part of the Apples and Arts Studio Tour that we use to advertise the tour is that it's a lovely drive through autumn scenery, so it kind of goes with the territory.
So it's fair to say the city taxpayers are helping to fund events in the counties that brings money into the counties, the restaurants and gas stations and coffee shops.
To some extent, yes, it's fair to say that, but with more than half of the artists in Cornwall and with the history of the tour being regional, it's celebrating the entire area. It's not making a distinction between Cornwall and the counties. It is Cornwall and the counties. It benefits the entire region. Cornwall is the focus of the region. More than half of the artists are there. Certainly the bulk of the traffic is there, whereas someone in Alexandria might see a dozen people visit during the two-day event. 125 Pitt saw 200-300 people come through.
Yeah, fair enough. You say Cornwall, Akwesasne, United Counties. You ever approached Akwesasne for funding?
For funding, actually, yes. We just had a very successful Art for All at the Native North American Traveling College. It was sponsored by Chief Benedict, so he paid for the rental of the college. We've had other events at the Native North American Traveling College, which we paid for. We've never applied for a grant, but we have had many cooperative programs back and forth.
Yeah. There's a wealth of artistic talent in Akwesasne.
There is. This entire region is extremely wealthy in terms of artistic resources.
You talk about the number of visitors, and I'm going with the Apples and Arts, which is my favorite one. You talk about the number of visitors, and you seem to write down 6,652. Doesn't sound like it's a round-off estimate. I just wondered, how do you count? Is there any way of really counting people that?
Well, for Apples and Art, we ask the individual locations to try and keep track as best they can of who comes through the doors. Yeah. During COVID, it was actually quite easy because everyone who came through a door had to sign their name. Oh, yeah. So we've been basing it on the statistics we've been keeping since 2016. And that's based on the artists trying to keep track of who comes through the door.
It's a difficult thing to do. We owned a building that was quite old at one time, and it was open for Apples and Arts, and nobody ever asked us how many people came to visit us. So I'm just wondering.
Well, since we took over in 2014, I implemented surveys, tracking in 2016, as I recall, and it's all in that table that is now too wet to
Yeah,
see.
it's a small point. I don't want to beat that one to death. Same with the cash value. People actually tell you how much they sold?
They do.
Really?
Yeah.
I wouldn't.
They do report. Well, they report on the basis of it being anonymous, that it's only ever
Oh,
going to be
okay.
used as an agglomerative total. So we use it for filing for grants,
Yeah, okay,
and we only use it as a total. We never break it down by artist.
yeah. And you're entirely volunteers, like executive directors are volunteer, people that on the board are obviously volunteers.
The board are all volunteers. We had a grant. Okay, so of the last, I've been executive director since 2015. I've been on the board since 2012. And for 8 of those 12 years, I've been a volunteer. We did get a grant in 2021-22 that paid a salary for me for that year. And originally, we were formed with a grant that paid the salary of the executive director, who wasn't me, for the first 2 years. But under normal circumstances, and certainly the bulk of the time, I am a volunteer executive director.
Yeah, okay, and that's good to hear. I mean, good for you. Couple of quick questions too is you say multi-year funding, you mean forever
Yes.
funding?
Well, I don't think forever is a fair term, although that would be awesome. But certainly, a 5-year term would be something that we could work with. We just want to have some stability moving forward. I mean, right now, in all conscience, I find it hard to approach or allow these groups to approach us and say, we want to be a standing committee, if I don't know that we're going to exist down the road. I mean, Focus Art puts a lot of faith in the fact that we're going to exist. Cornwall Art Walk, again, all of their URLs, all of their everything is registered through your Arts Council. So if we don't exist, they're in a pickle.
Yeah. One final question is, do you have any an estimate on how much money you have received from the city over the years?
How much money I have what?
You've received from the city for funding?
I do have that number.
Maybe Miss Bailey might have it.
It's not something I brought with me today, but it's somewhere around 75,000, I would think,
Really?
since 2012.
Ms. Bailey?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the last 3 years, your Arts Council received $30,000, 10 years, $10,000 per year through the municipal grants program. Before that, in 2019, they received $25,000.
Okay.
And before that, it was about $15,000 for every year.
Fair enough. Thank you.
I have a speakers list. Councilor Gunjo, then Councilor Gardner.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much for your presentation. Honestly, I trust in art. It's very important what you're doing because we're going to say it a lot of time. Art is our identity. It's something that we need to express ourselves. It's very powerful. Thank you for that. I will have some questions for you. The first one is, do you have a strategy to attract artists from Akwesasne community?
We reach out to Akwesasne through the artists that we're dealing with now. For example, I mentioned Yafa Gawali, arranged with Chief Benedict for the the Native North American Traveling College for our Art for All event. So, and our board is in contact. One of our board members is a filmmaker in Akwesasne. So we're always talking to artists from there, trying to arrange for them to participate in events such as Apples and Art, such as Cornwall Art Walk and Art Hive. There's always a communication open. I may not be the person fronting that communication effort all the time, but it's always there.
I'm asking this because I know that it's a way to bring different community together. So it's very important to open this door.
Absolutely, I agree.
And at the same point, do you have any strategy to attract French or Francophone artists?
Again, through our associations in the community, through the committees that we sit on, both as members of the board and myself, we are constantly reaching out to French-speaking art organizations. L'Amalgame is one that I'm very familiar with. We are advertising their events. We are assisting them in any way that we can so that their events are as successful as possible, and we do that every day. It's not, there's no written strategy for how we're doing that. It's just the communication that goes on through our board, through myself, through the various committees that we all serve on. We're always coordinating and reaching out to groups.
Last question through you, Mr. Mayor. Let's say at the end of the day you have a success story and you have the fund that you're expecting. Are you going to try to work about Cornwall identity through the province, through the country, to make all the events that you're talking about more known around the province, out of the city? Is it something that you thinking about, or you're just trying to work in our community here around the city?
Again, through you, Mr. Mayor, our our mandate was to be a regional arts council. That was what we were formed to do. We have events that cover the width and breadth of SDNG, the Appleton Art Studio Tour, which also have a strong focus here in Cornwall. As I said, half or more of the locations are here, and certainly more than half of the visitors are here. Art Walk, all about Cornwall from 2nd Street down to Water Street. That's all. And we do bring artists in from the entire community. I don't want to spill anything else. We do bring artists in from the entire community to Cornwall Art Walk. We're going to have people from Akwesasne. We're going to have people from Alexandria. We're going to have people from Montreal. We're going to have people from Ottawa. But it's all about Cornwall in that downtown section. The Cornwall Art Hive, only events in Cornwall so far. Not to say that we won't branch out and do events elsewhere, but right now we're focused on Cornwall. The Spectacle Art Event Calendar, it's about the whole region. There are more events in Cornwall than there are throughout the region, so it tends to be Cornwall-centric. So the answer to your question is, we're going to continue doing what we're doing. That's what we're offering. It's both the region and specifically Cornwall, but in each case, Cornwall is being represented as the place to be, as the arts center, as a place where you can bring your family and have all these creative resources available to you.
Last one. Thank you very much. I agree with you. Cornwall is the place to be. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Gardner, then Councillor McDonald.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and welcome, Richard, and welcome to all these arts people that are sitting back there. I've been involved with YAC for quite a few years until I had to leave because I was too busy, but I knew you were going to survive. One of the hardest things and the most stressful things that we have year after year after year was to try and find enough funding to keep Yak alive. I'm going to support this because I feel that most of these events are signature events. And for $25,000, I want to keep Yak alive. I appreciate what you've done, Richard. I appreciate the backing that the arts community has given you. And I certainly will vote in favor of having at least 5 years at $25,000 for Yak. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Sorry, as far as budgets are concerned, I went through that over and over and over for a number of years. And I know how difficult it was to be able to have enough money to survive. So I hope you'll be able to survive with the $25,000.
Councillor McDonald.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So through you, just a few comments. In 2012, it was the Culturescape report that called for the establishment of a regional arts, I guess, committee or whatever. And it was that led to the creation of Yak. And at the same time, there was an economic development report written for the city of Cornwall, and it's appalling. It says, Cornwall does not have a focal point for arts and culture, blah, blah, blah. It went on to say, but it had the potential. And I have to say that it's Yak that actually harnessed that potential, and you have made a focal point, a central point of reference for arts in Cornwall. And and I think you do it by responding to the artists, like Art Walk, for example. I think it was Elaine Arkwright, if I remember correctly, who had seen something like this in Hamilton, brought it to Cornwall, and obviously Yak jumped on board, and it is what it is now. So, and I appreciate the fact that you've submitted budget and talked about the dollars and cents that we gain every year. But I think it's incalculable, the real value that you bring, because it raises the cultural ceiling, and you really can't calculate the benefit of a creative economy to a post-industrial city that's struggling for, a new way to make a good living as it had in the past. Arts are a huge part of that, and I'd say Yak is a huge part of that. So I certainly support all Yak does. And it's a shame when a committee that does as much as Yak does has to spend half or 3/4 of its energy having bake sales to support themselves for something that is so important to a community as arts and culture. So there's no question that I will support your request, and
Thank you.
hope my colleagues do as well. Thank you for all you do.
Councillor Good, then Councillor Dupel.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. Thank you very much for this presentation. I echo my colleague's sentiment that I am wholeheartedly in support of this investment. And I believe that it is an investment that you've shown the economic benefit. And really, it's such a small piece of the pie. When we look at the community building that this brings, we've talked around the table about, how we're involving different communities, not just regionally, but culturally, the Francophone community, our Mohawk community in Akwesasne, and it goes on and on. We haven't even talked about the benefits that this has in terms of mental health. We've just come out of a pandemic where many of us have spent endless hours at home inside. And arts and culture are one of the few escapes that people have. So to me, beyond the economic benefits, which I think are clear, I believe there are social and cultural benefits that will come of this that I am very, very prepared to support. As far as the length of the term, I'm not sure. But certainly for a number of years, we're waiting for the formation of our Arts and Culture Committee, and I hope and I assume that Yak will be part of that in some capacity, and we will figure all that out. I think in the grand scheme of things, $25,000 per year is a minimal investment in what we're getting in return, and I'm happy that you're serving the entire region. Frankly, I don't think that we should, nitpick about that, because Cornwall is seeing the majority of the benefit as far as the services that you're providing, so thank you. Yes, you have my full support.
Thank you.
Councillor Dupel.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. I just, some of my questions were answered, so I just wanted to say thank you for the detailed information you gave us, including the budget. It's greatly appreciated. I do know of the good work that your committee does, and I think that it should be duly noted that to have a volunteer executive director, along with the board of directors, to move something such as a great group as yourselves is something to be noted for sure. And I'm sure the community appreciates that. But we need to be honest, and we all know that art enriches the lives of people. So whether you're someone who's just taking in an art show, or you're an artist that paints, you know, or shows everything through their paintings or their artwork, I mean, no doubt that this is a community service that we need here, and I will fully support the your recommendation.
Thank you.
Councillor Bennett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. This was a nice presentation, Mr. Salem. Thank you very much for it. And the detail of it, that I really appreciate, because there's no mystery what we're looking for here, which is great. My colleague, Councillor McDonald, stole about 90% of what I wanted to tell you, so I'll thank you for that, Elaine. But I did want to touch a little bit on, you know, I keep, it's mentioned sometimes that, you know, about being a regional arts council, and it kind of be taken as a negative, and I think it should be taken more as a positive, because when you include the region, then you make this area a destination. And if you're looking at the destination, if you're going to make a weekend out of checking out the arts and culture offerings that the city has, well, you're not staying in too many hotels in Lancaster, and you're not, you know, so this will be the focal point of the tourism draw. So I don't think, and when you factor in that we have an arts center coming on board soon, between the two, this will be a hub for arts and culture going forward, and it's about time, because it was like the best hidden secret forever. So, you know, thanks for exposing the secret. The other thing is you know, we talk about kind of the same point, I guess, is the half and half as far as studios for Apples and Arts. The point was made that a majority of the people are here. And again, people are coming here for the weekend to tour. You're staying here at a hotel. There's not a lot of hotels in Maxville and in Lancaster and all these other places. So this would be the focal point. So our restaurants are going to see the majority of the dollars spent in the region are going to be here. So I don't think we should be afraid of it. I think, if anything else, we should be celebrating this region as an area, much the same way the county near Belleville is wine country, and it's got arts and culture through the whole thing. But I can tell you, Belleville probably wins the best out of that situation, because that's where most of the hotels and restaurants and such are, unless you're lucky enough to get one in that area. You look at, you go around Ile de Laurier in Quebec City, lots of arts and culture things to see, lots of wonderful things to do. Well, they're all staying in Quebec City. So we are the hub of the area. So let's not be afraid of including the region. I think it's only a positive. So I'm looking forward to supporting this as well. I think this is going to be a great partnership.
Thank you.
Further comments from council? Anyone who hasn't spoken yet? Councillor Hebert?
I guess I can just say ditto. Waiting till the end, making it easy for my turn. Of course, I will support this. This, especially working in the nonprofit sector, I want everyone to, and I think everybody understands. Even if someone's working as a volunteer, doesn't mean they don't need that money to survive. I think what we've seen is that they have been resourceful with the limited sustainable funding they have had. And just imagine what they could do if they had the next 5 years guaranteed sustainable funding from our municipality. Their reach can grow beyond. I think that was kind of part of Councillor Fred's question. You know, yes, it's regional, but maybe with a bit more funds, we can do a bit of a reach outside of our community to bring people within SDG, Cornwall, Akwesasne for these events, which is already happening, but you know, even a greater reach. So very much supportive of this. Looking forward to council, to administration's report to council. But I don't think you're going to have a hard time having a success story, I think was mentioned from this council. Congratulations on the work you've been doing.
Thank you.
Final comments? Yeah, I'll make a few. I mean, it's all been said. I don't have much to add to my colleagues, but you can certainly count on my support as well. The work that the arts community in Yak in particular has been undertaking, especially in the last couple of years, has been phenomenal. The events that have been taking place, especially coming out of a pandemic, during a pandemic, were not only a welcome distraction, but certainly showed us the importance that art can play in helping mental health and our mental wellness and our well-being in general. I don't have much else to add because I just repeating what was said around the table, so forgive me for that. However, I certainly look forward to when the report comes back and we vote on this. Councilor
I'm
McIntosh?
just wondering why we need a report. I think around the council table, it's quite obvious that there's support for this. Why would we need to wait for a report?
Mr. Bolo?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I think the report would probably provide a bit of the detail that we would find both from the finance department as well as perhaps some comparables with other organizations. But, you know, it's council that can decide whether they want to move ahead now or later.
There is a motion on the table. I would remind council of that. If the mover and seconder want to change the motion or withdraw the motion and a new one come forward, or I'll look to the clerk for some guidance on that.
The motion could be withdrawn, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor McDonald?
I'd just like to make the point that I think a report from administration is usually very helpful because it will establish the parameters of what we can expect and also not make you go crazy trying to do maybe the impossible, you know. I think we should spell out the terms of the agreement we're going to have, what we expect from Yak and what Yak can expect from us. And it's, I think, going to make the whole situation easier to deal with. Because if you have an open-ended agreement, you get somebody with goodwill, they're going to kill themselves trying to do the max. And we have seen the artists in this city do that all the time. So I think we should establish some parameters through the administration report.
I appreciate,
Through the chair, Councillor Bennett, and with mic on, please.
through you, Mr. Mayor. I was looking at you at least. I can appreciate Councillor McIntosh's suggestion, but I agree with Councillor McDonald. I'd rather see this get done properly, some communication between our administration and Yak, and make sure we get this right. So I'd rather do that than just throw out a number and have nothing else in place. So I don't think it'll take very long, so I'd rather move forward with the motion.
If there's no further comments, I'm going to call the vote on the motion then. All in favor of the motion? Carried. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Salem.
Thank you. They're a little wet, but I do have letters of support that people have been sending in for the last couple of weeks. I'd like to leave those with you.
Absolutely.
Wet, yeah. It wasn't me crying over them, although some did bring a tear to my eye. Thank you.
Madam Clerk?
Our consent reports include a few proclamations with the following recommendations. That Council proclaim Wednesday, May 17, 2023 as International Day Against Homophobia and Transphobia in the City of Cornwall. That Council proclaim Sunday, June 18, 2023 as the longest day of smiles in the City of Cornwall. And that Council proclaim the week of May 21st to 27, 2023 as paramedic... Oh, sorry, that one was moved to communication. My apologies. Temporary street closure for Cornwall Art Walk, with a recommendation that Council approve the temporary street closure of Pitt Street from 2nd Street to 1st Street and from 1st Street to 58 Pitt Street on Friday, June 23rd, 2023, between the hours of 1:30 in the afternoon to 9:30 in the evening.
Motion?
Oh, I have one more, Mr. Mayor, and that is the request for proposal 23P05, Pharmaceutical Services for the Glen Stoydon Lodge, with a recommendation that this RFP be awarded to MediSystem Pharmacy from Toronto for a period of 5 years, with the option to renew for an additional 2-year period.
Thank you. Motion? Councillor Hollingsworth? Councillor Gardner? Discussion? No discussion. Well, if the chair allows it. All in favor? Carried. Thank you.
reports from unfinished business. Number 1, process to assess climate adaptation within the community with the following recommendation. That council receive this report, administration include a community climate adaptation plan in the 2024 capital budget building off of the 2023 climate action plan endorsed by council at the regular council meeting of April 11th.
Motion. Counselor Hollingsworth, seconder. Counselor Good, discussion. Counselor Gunjo.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, thank you very much. I want to explain something very particular. We are dealing about a major problem concerning environment. And a few years ago, I think, the city of Cornwall declared state of emergency. So, and the news are very bad about what are going on about environment. I think we are called to go further. It's not enough what we are doing. We decided to plant trees. We need more trees. So I'm going to call my colleague to try to go further. And my point of view about this item is that we should go further, and the money we will spend here can be sent to plant more trees, because we know what we have to do now. We have all the information that we deserve, so we just know what to do. So now my point of view is time to act and stop dealing with reports and all those stuff, because discussing with our residents, they are waiting for this council to be more efficient, more aggressive, more accurate about solution concerning environment. So I'm not going to support this. And if there is any money, I think this money can be sent to plant trees. That is my point. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Counselor Good, then Counselor McDonald.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. I'm looking for some clarity around what exactly this item is requesting of council. So this is to direct administration to create a report outlining the process to assess climate adaptation within the community and determine if joining the International Council for Local Environmental Initiatives and building adaptive resilient communities is beneficial, correct? So, okay. I want to understand exactly what is being asked here. I'm fully in support of the climate adaptation plan. It says it's estimated $120,000 for administration to proceed with the request for proposal wouldn't be that, but I assume the budget for the request for proposal. I'm a little bit confused as to exactly what this is asking for, if that can be clarified.
Mr. Fothrop.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So there was an outstanding item when we declared the climate emergency, which was to review a climate adaptation plan for the city of Cornwall, in addition to completing a climate action plan. So now that we have the climate action plan completed, the next step is a climate adaptation plan. So what we're requesting from council this evening is just to address that one item in our unfinished business listing, as well as endorse bringing forward a climate adaptation plan to next year's budget. Administration would work on the request for proposal, terms of reference over the course of this year. And then we would bring forward a budgetary item in 2024 to move forward with an adaptation plan.
Thank you very much. Okay, so through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm in full support of this. As much as I am on board for planting more trees in our community, I don't oppose that in any way whatsoever. I really do think that this money is best spent on really concretely determining what our adaptation plan is, because trees are important, but they're not singularly important. I believe that there are many aspects to this, as was outlined in the climate action plan, not the climate adaptation plan. So I was a little bit confused because I thought we just had received this basically in our last meeting or a couple meetings ago. And so the fee for that proposal would be 120, or that would be our budget anyways for it, is what I'm understanding. Is that correct, Mr. Fothrop?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, that's what we're estimating.
Okay. I'm in support of this. Thank you.
Councillor McDonald.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I speak in support of this motion as well. I think we're all agreed that we know where we want to go, but we desperately need a roadmap on the way to get there. And I have to say that at the Sustainability Conference of FCM this year, for example, there were so many new ideas beyond those which I'd heard at a FCM Sustainability Conference 2 years prior, that we actually need some expertise, and this is a group with a national scope of operations, so obviously their research is based on real-life experience and probably experiments going on across the country, and especially ways to build in some resilience to climate hazards and disasters, which it's a changing science. So I don't think we can count on our own staff to provide that, because they've all got day jobs and we watch them closely and make sure they're working all the time at it. So this is a call here for outside expertise that we either have to give our people time off to do, or we hire somebody else to do it. And I think this is what we need to do.
Any further comments? Councillor Gardner.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Mr. Boileau. We talk about planting trees, and that's a great idea, and it needs to be done. But I think 2 meetings ago, I brought up the fact that we needed to have a bylaw in place to stop clear cutting and how we replace the trees that are clear cut, and make sure we have a bylaw that contractors do that. That they replace the trees that they cut. I mean, all you have to do is go down Power Dam, and there isn't a tree on that piece of land. So what are we going to do as a council to force contractors to be able to replant trees where they're building homes?
Mr. Paul.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it's a conversation that's happening currently. And it's not a simple issue, I believe, and I think many would agree when you start getting into the debate. When it comes to tree planting, I think the corporation does a very good job of requiring trees through site plans, through subdivision, within our own parks, et cetera. The more challenging item is the private property. And as you've pointed out, we don't currently have a tree cutting bylaw. And that's been talked about for years. I think we're in that conversation now. And I think council will soon be dealing with what we feel to be an appropriate policy for tree cutting. And, it would be to try and deter developers from very broadly removing trees. One of the issues that we have been seeing in many subdivisions where you see the tree cutting is the challenges with getting proper lot drainage without in fact cutting all of the trees and having a lot drainage plan that works. But and the same a little bit with private developments that are commercial developments or industrial developments. Oftentimes they feel that it's beneficial to clean the slate and then start from there. But I think if we put in place site plan requirements where they see benefit in retaining trees, because we would require them to, in fact, plant a whole lot of trees, they will start to see that the retention of the trees is very economical for them. So that is really where we are. We've seen other municipalities where, for removal of trees on a certain size, whether it be 2 acres or 5 acres, or that there is a certain requirement. that you do need. So in other words, perhaps when you have a single-family lot or something of that size, that there are no requirements other than what we currently do, which is sort of a tree per lot. But if you start getting into something of any significance, whether it's beyond 2 acres or et cetera, that, yeah, if you're gonna clear that thing, you need a permit, you need to come to the municipality, you need to have it professionally assessed also. Does it have butternut trees? What are the species on the property? So those are all things that, it's the private property that's more complicated. I think the public property, we have very good programs for, but that's where the conversation is. And I'm not sure if staff from, whether it be recreation or engineering or the environment, may have comments to add.
If not, I thank you for that answer, and to hear that it's in conversation is a plus for me. That's why I asked the question, to find out what was being done. If it's in conversation, that's your job, not mine. Thank you.
Further comments, Councillor McIntosh?
Yeah, when it comes to that, I think there was a comment made, council, a couple weeks ago, made the developers look like the bad guys in this. Mark, they're a major stakeholder in the community. They build the houses. They work very closely, I think, at this time with your planning department and whatnot. Are they part of the conversation? Is that what you meant with the folks that are developers?
Typically when we do this sort of thing, we have involved the Builders Association, for example, in things like site plan manuals. We're in constant communication with the developers with respect to subdivisions. So absolutely, they're in conversation with us sort of in every step. And we know, when things change, they're in communication with us pretty quickly.
I'd like to point out too, Carrie Lynn sits on the Raisin Region Authority with me, and thousands of trees are given away each year for, seedlings. And so there's along with the city's initiative too, so there's a big replacement program. And, when it comes to the country, the rural areas, one member of the Raisin Region pointed out, we may clear land, but we're growing food.
The only other items through you, Mr. Mayor, that I would indicate is that we have very recently, and that's council, put in place a parkland dedication, much more improved parkland dedication policy. So that applies to a variety of developments when in the past it was very specific and much less of a requirement.
Nothing we do but the beavers, though.
No.
Further comments? Okay, seeing none, all in favor? All opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Next is our unfinished business listing, and we are looking for a motion to receive that list, Mr. Mayor.
Motion? Councillor Bennett, seconder. Councillor Gardner. Any discussion? Councillor Gardner.
Again, through you to Mark. The unfinished business used to have the Domtar property and the CIL property. And I think the question I want to ask you now is there any movement on either one of those two properties?
Mr. Ball?
We have had numerous, and when I say we, both the engineering department, the planning department have had numerous meetings with the owners, the owners of the former Domtar, which is Paris Holdings. There is both a plan of subdivision and, of course, another major institutional project that is looking for that, and a rezoning of a residential property that council, as planning advisory committee, will deal with on Monday of next week. With respect to the Axo Nobel site, which is the one that is the former CIL property, I met with the owner of that property about 2 weeks ago and talked a bit about how he's going to move forward. So both of those properties are obviously privately owned, and council will see some of those applications in the coming months and couple of years. The more complicated one is the Axon Bell site, but there are some advancements more on the former Domtar lands that you'll see very soon.
Okay, and there was a rumor that the school board was looking at a super high school in that area. So
Yeah.
I'm just wondering if that's a rumor, or should I just shut up about it and let you guys work with it?
That's the one I termed an institutional development.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Further comments? Okay, all in favor? Carried, thank you.
PAC Report 2, changes to the Planning Division fees with the following recommendation: that council endorse the following changes to the Planning Division fee schedule to include A 6% fee increase to all applicable planning development application fees, and B, addition of a new fee for the temporary patio encroachment agreement renewal.
Council? Councilor Bennett, you moving the recommendation? Councilor Good, are you seconding? Okay, discussion? Councilor Good.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just wondering, as far as item B, addition of a new fee for temporary patio encroachment agreement. Oh, renewal. Okay, my apologies. I was going to say, what did we do last year? Because we did start this, yes, last year. I've answered my own question. Apologies.
Further questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, all in favor? Carried, thank you.
Town Hall meeting to discuss future plans for 504 4th Street East, the former Bob Turner Memorial Center site, and Joe St. Denis Field. With a recommendation that council host a town hall meeting inviting members of the public to express comments, concerns, and/or questions to council on future development plans for 504 4th Street East.
Councilor McDonald.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that recommendation, but I would like to add a friendly amendment. At the April 24th meeting, we had an extensive report, 2 reports actually, that touch on this matter. But because we deferred the motion that would have brought those 2 reports to light, they never got a hearing or a discussion. And I think, so I would like to add that the codicil to this motion, that after we hear administration's reports on those 2 matters, because I think we could be just aimlessly daydreaming about wonderful uses for 504 4th Street without realizing what some of the hard facts are on the ground and some of the realities that are really would help, limit the discussion and make it much more practical and probably more beneficial to us. So I hope that would just be considered a friendly amendment. It would touch the time of the town hall, that we have a discussion here in council chambers of the reports that we didn't hear about on April 24th before we have the town hall. Like either, the council meeting before, 2 weeks before, whatever. But a sufficient time period that all that information would be out there for the public to entertain.
If I can, Mr. Mayor. So those 2 reports are now on the unfinished business listing, and even though council is planning on having a town hall, council cannot make a decision at town hall meetings. So we would have to come back to council.
But in terms of priority, I think it could be pretty frustrating for everybody at a town hall meeting if people were proposing things that are just impossible in light of the facts that are contained in those reports. So all I care about is the timing. If those reports are now on the unfinished business listing, let's get to them before we schedule the town hall. That's all I'd like to do.
That would be acceptable, yeah.
Is there a seconder for the motion? Councilor Gardner. Debate on the motion. Councilor McIntosh?
I'm just, those reports, would it include soil testing?
Referenced.
Mr. Fawthorpe?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, no, there has been no soil testing completed to date. That would, we would need, I guess, a budget to do that, and the time as well to complete a soils investigation.
Yeah, I think thought is that there used to be an arena there, and usually vacant properties that had arenas, there's always a problem. And also I came across a story in one of the old papers that there was a lot of fill put in that site way back in the day, and be interesting what the soil testing would.
Councillor Hollingsworth.
Thank you, Your Worship. Can I just get the subsequent motion read, the one presented by Councillor McDonald?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, the motion is as recommended with the addition of the following wording, and to bring back the 2 reports prior to the town hall meeting.
Right. Thank you, Your Worship. I'm not going to vote in favor of, I'm fine with the town hall meeting concept, but I'm actually not going to vote in favor of the addition, because I think the whole point of the town hall meeting, before we deal with the 2 issues, is to get some feedback from the public. Now, I don't know about my colleagues, but it seemed to me there was an email sent to, I'm going to assume all of us, from one of the youth committee groups asking us to defer. I think part of the objective there would be for them to A, talk amongst themselves, and then potentially present, I don't know if some other suggestions how we can move forward, or to say this is our site no matter what, if it's not here, it's over. So I'd like to know, like, administration kind of said, yeah, we agree with the concept, but we have some other suggestions as to where it should go. The committee specifically said it's kind of the Bob Turner, or we don't really know what to do. So I personally am not prepared to deal with the reports until I hear from the public. And I suppose we're going to potentially kind of haggle over which comes first on this one. But to me, before I vote in favor of what administration is suggesting, I'd like to know what the community thinks. And I realize it might be a bit of a kind of a slow grinding discussion at the town hall meeting, but the whole point to me is to get public feedback before we act on the recommendations, good, bad, or indifferent. So I'm going to actually vote, I like the town hall meeting, but with the addition of dealing with the reports first, kind of defeats the purpose of the town hall meeting as I see it, Your Worship. So maybe I'm misreading or maybe I'm misunderstanding, but as I'm getting it, it seems to be kind of counterproductive. So I'm not going to support the recommendation with the addition, if you will, or the friendly amendment.
Mr. Boileau.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. The property that is the former, well, it is still the Bob Turner, I suppose, Joe St. Denis Field, is largely a football field and a slab that used to be the Bob Turner Arena. And I think, as you'll see from the report that Mr. Fothrop has written, we have the football program on the football field, and we have a slab that may have some environmental concerns. We're saying this because we are very familiar with what happened at the Cy Miller property, which got us into a considerable amount of money to remove. And the reason I'm saying this is because at some point, we should be letting council know about these details. And I'm only raising 2 of those items, but I don't think it would be a good idea to listen to a number of comments from the public without, in fact, having some of the facts about the property. So either we could provide council with a bit of those facts prior to the town hall meeting, and we're very much in support of a town hall meeting. We'd really like to see what the neighborhood has to say about what is being proposed. But I don't want, what I'm suggesting is that we not just listen to comments from the neighbors without having some of the facts that we know about.
Still in order here, Your Worship. I think one thing that's noteworthy here is that council isn't going to vote on anything at a town hall meeting. It's specifically in the procedure. So regardless of, even if somebody said, I think we should paint the field green or blue, and we all said, that's a great idea, we're still not gonna actually vote on that. So any report that administration feels is necessary before we take action, I would think would be presented at a subsequent official council meeting. So we can listen to the public say, we think we should do this and this and this, but we're not taking any action that evening regardless of what they say. So if the concern is that we should have the facts and figures, I think most of us or all of us would probably agree with that. But that being said, we're not gonna deal with that until, like, we're not dealing with any opinions about the public. We're just hearing what they have to say. Then we get any potential sort of additional reports. Then we have a recommendation. Then we debate whether we agree or not in light of what the public said and in light of what our administration is saying. But if we deal with what administration is reporting prior to the public, you're kind of missing part of the piece of the puzzle. In terms of the order I think things should work in, but that's just me.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I don't disagree. I guess what I want to say, though, is that at some point, the details that Mr. Fothrop and Ms. Morgan have put into their reports, it'd be good if we could provide that to council and, of course, to the public, so that they understand some of those facts.
Councillor Good.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. I guess procedurally, that's my question about it as well. As I imagine bringing the report back to council prior to the town hall, if we're voting on the report without having the town hall, then we're not getting all the information that we're looking for. And if we defer it, then we're in the same position that we are now. We've all read the report, I assume. It's come to all of us. We've seen it. At this point, just in my opinion, procedurally, it seems to make more sense to do the town hall, hear the suggestions, hear what people have to say, and then we go through the report. If there's any additional information that administration feels is pertinent that should be in the new report, I don't know if that happens when it gets deferred, if there's any kind of amendments that are made to it. But what I would want to know is that when we're finally discussing it, when we're discussing it in terms of making a decision on what's going to happen with this project, we have all the information so we know what the opinions and thoughts and concerns are from the public. And then we also know, of course, from administration's side, what some of the details are about the history of the property and some of the environmental concerns, some of the, the logistical nitty-gritty that we need to know. So I have no issue, but I think procedurally that bringing the report before the town hall, to me, that doesn't make sense. So I wouldn't support that amendment. I don't know how we can kind of expedite the process to make it faster. I think we need to hear from the public. I think that's effective. Maybe I'm speaking off topic here, but as far as the town hall is concerned, I would say it's challenging not to be able to ask questions to administration during a town hall. So for us, I think this will be really more of an information gathering session so that we can hear what the public wants, so that when we are debating and discussing your report, we can bring some of those questions to that debate and get clarity and get answers, all of which are going to be on the record. So that's my thoughts. I don't support the amendment, but yeah.
Mr. Bullock?
If I may, briefly, it can be that staff's reports are only here to be received and that the town hall occurs. You could do it in a different order. It really does matter.
Councillor Bennett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. I think that's a good idea that was just brought forward by Mr. Boileau, in that it's a report to receive at our next meeting, so that we'll have the information again, but that it'll be out there for the public to see as well before we get to the town hall. I don't have a problem with that. I don't think that really delays anything. But we deferred them specifically to have a town hall, so I don't even know if we can do that. We made a decision to defer it for that reason. I don't know if procedurally we could just turn around and go against that decision. I don't know if is that a thing? Could we need a 2/3 majority to do that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the idea of the town hall was not part of the motion. I heard about it after the meeting, and it wasn't part of the discussion at the last meeting.
So it was just deferred to hear from the public, but it wasn't, the town hall
It was
wasn't the reason?
deferred until council had more information.
Okay. Either way, I'd like to move forward with the town hall. I mean, we have a colleague that has stepped away from the table because of the work that she does with the Social Development Council, who did a majority of the work on that report, by the way. And so, while this is a conflict of interest for her here, I would hope that at a town hall meeting, where no decisions are being made, we could get some information from our colleague who, as I just said, did a lot of work in that report we got from the organization that presented to us. I kind of want to hear all that as well, and I think that's the best done at the town hall. And if we receive these two reports as just to receive them rather than act on them, because they both were asking for actions, and we're trying not to do that until we hear from the public. So if we got those to receive, the reports, at least we'll have them. They'll be open to the public to see, and then we can have our town hall a couple weeks after that. And let's just do this the way we intended to do it when we deferred in the first place, is hear from the public.
Further comments? Councillor Sabri.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I can certainly appreciate where Councillor McDonald and Councillor Hollingsworth are both coming from. They're important considerations to be taken into the points that they've raised. And within the whole process, I keep asking myself, we're inviting the public to a meeting for their input, their direction, their desires, their wish lists, if you will. But if we have certain information that they don't have, are we giving them a false hope and lowering their expectations because they don't know it, but we might know it? And I know that council is, or the administration is open, but they always have to answer the question, open within the realm of what is feasible and what is not feasible, and that. So it really, you know, in some respects, I kind of like the idea of giving us the information so that we understand where our administration is coming from. As much as we try to give them direction, they also have a tight rein on the purse strings, and they understand how things can come to be far more easier than we can. But at the same time, I am concerned as to the perception that will be out there in the public. And one other thing that I would like to suggest, throw out there, if we're going to have a public meeting on something as important as this, could we change the venue? Because I have this feeling that there is going to be a large interest and participation from the public. That's my comments.
We can consider that. Further comments? Councillor McIntosh.
Just picking up where Dennis left off, through you, Mr. Mayor, to the fire chief, how many people can we put in this room legally, and you're sitting here?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, not as many as will attend.
That could be a consideration.
Further comments?
To wrap?
I'd wrap up, Councillor McDonald, yeah.
Oh, thank you. So I don't want to give the impression that I don't value a town hall. We experienced one last week, and we heard all sorts of ideas that we might not have heard otherwise. And I'm sure a lot of us heard those ideas and thought, well, this is a good idea, or this is a pie-in-the-sky idea. We can't do this, but we couldn't even, you hate to argue with people if you're inviting them to give you their thoughts and their hopes for something. So I think in a way it's teasing the public. If we have a town hall, what are we going to do with 504? They're going to come with an expectation that we're going to respond to what they tell us. You know, council wants to know what we want. Well, the fact is, council wants very much to know what they want in terms of what's possible. It's like, you know, that old expression, you can have a difference of opinion, but we got to start with an agreement of the same set of facts. So just in terms of the pollution that Councillor McIntosh brought up, I think we're looking here, what's on the table is like a $600 budget. So we'd clean the ground under the slab maybe, And that's the end of the plan. And then it's no longer somebody else doing, it's us budgeting for the rest of, I don't know how long, to revamp the recreation master plan, because it actually foresees a youth center, an athletic, the football field, for example, being moved up to the Benson Center. Like, there are some pretty far-reaching implications to the plan going through as is. So, and those facts have not been aired. And not that you want to say to people, like, you can't do that, or we don't want your opinion, but we want you to know that these are the parameters. Like, for example, a typical neighborhood park, I'm just off the top, how big is a typical neighborhood park, Mr. Fothrop, if I may?
A typical neighborhood park is usually, it might be, I'll say a couple of acres would be.
Okay, so how many acres is the Bob Turner site?
I would say when we looked at the, even just the concrete slab with the asphalt parking lots was probably about 3 to 4 times that size.
So we're going to dedicate this whole space that would ordinarily, you know, accommodate 3 or 4 neighborhood parks plus, and that's just the slab part, right? So to one single park, to a youth-oriented space, like, I think that's a very popular idea. Everybody wants the best for youth. And unfortunately, as the report references, that sector of the population is very hard to serve, and has been very hard to serve through recreation programs in municipalities, not just us. Like, this is typical. So I think a really thorough airing of the facts and the parameters that we have to deal with is only fair to the public, so that if they come up and say we want such and such there, they won't feel 6 months later, they asked us what we wanted and they didn't give it to us. Well, I think we can work with them. I mean, we'd probably love to do something pretty spectacular there too. But we know the realities of the dollars and cents, the realities of the pollution, the realities of the size, the realities of a neighborhood. And we know so often you get conflicts. You know, people, for example, want the train schedule to change or stop whistling, but the train got there first. So it's really hard to make them accommodate. And we've got a neighborhood there that's pretty established. And if we put a teenage youth center right next door to it, we'd be doing the reverse thing, you know? We'd be adding the possible neighborhood incompatibility. It would be our doing. Whereas the 2 other sites that were mentioned don't have that same potential source of conflict. So I'm afraid in a town hall meeting, we wouldn't just get people wanting impossible things. We'd be getting some very unhappy people, you know, afraid of the prospects of what would be placed there. And just the fact that I think a teen center would be very popular, but just the fact that it doesn't have that element of inclusivity, I think is just opposed to everything that we as a municipality advocate. And I just think that, I'm not sure if we want to turn loose something without some parameters established on it, because we could have a whole lot of unhappy people at the end of it, and we would have been the source of it by raising false expectations. Thank you.
I saw some hands go up, but I allowed Councillor McDonald to wrap up, so procedurally, debate is over. I'm about to call the vote on the motion. I do apologize to my colleagues. All in favor of the motion? Yes.
Mr. Mayor, I just want to
Yes, it's the motion as amended. All opposed to the motion? Motion is defeated. I'm open to receiving new motions. Councillor Hollingsworth.
Yes, Your Worship, I'll move the actual recommendation council's town hall meeting, inviting members, public express comments concerning the questions and future development of the final.
Seconder. Councillor Bennett. Discussion? Okay. Councillor McIntosh.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, is there a date? When would this be? Are we looking a month down the road, 2 months down the road? Don't pick the night to play in the Stanley Cup final.
It's not the Maple Leafs report.
Madam Clerk, Mr. Ballo.
I think all we can do is look at our schedules, council schedule, and we'll try to make arrangements for as soon as possible.
Further comments or questions? Okay. All in favor? All opposed? Motion's carried. Thank you.
We have two new business motions, the first being community messages and general inquiries. Now therefore be it resolved that administration report on the feasibility of adding a community messages and general inquiries section to the agenda of a regular meeting of council. That was proposed by Councillors Hollingsworth and Sabouret.
Councillor Hollingsworth.
Thank you, Your Worship. Currently, the clerk is reviewing our procedural bylaw, which entails council meetings as well. And what came to my attention just recently is that if a councillor wants to ask a question outside of what's on the actual agenda, there is no place for that councillor to ask any questions. So if I wanted to ask Mr. Fothrop, are we going to pave First Street this year? Technically, there's nothing in the agenda for me to do that. And if I ask that question and the mayor recognizes that question, I am in essence out of order. The other thing you'll notice if you were to take a look at page 10, if you're a paper person in terms of our agenda, if you look at the minutes, every single person there, with the possible exception of Councillor Gardner, made a comment about an outside community event that was in essence out of order. Every single comment on that page was out of order. Now, historically, mayors have recognized councillors who want to plug an event to say there's a fundraiser this Friday and wouldn't it be great if we all go? And I've done it myself, but in essence, it's technically out of order. And if you wanted to make a comment about a fundraiser on Friday, you would have to get a mover and a seconder to suspend the rules, and then assuming that you get that majority, then you can say what you want to say. So all I'm asking is that when the clerk reviews the procedural bylaw, would there be a possibility to include some kind of community announcement or a general question kind of tab? Now, one could argue the fear is that it'll go all over the place and somebody makes the question and then somebody decides and we have motions and all that kind of stuff. But what I would suggest, and I'm going to leave it in the hands of our good clerk if I can get a majority, is that when we have our procedural bylaw, under each tab it specifies the things we can and can't do under that tab. So, for example, you could have some kind of provision in that tab to say each councillor is entitled 1 minute. No motions, no debate, much the same as consent. And if you want to get into a debate, you have to suspend the rules. All it does, to me, is give an opportunity for councillors to make comments about community events and technically still remain in order so that you don't have to suspend all the rules and go through all that procedure. And quite frankly, if you read the recommendation or the motion, all it's asking for is the clerk to review that as a possibility, and she might, in terms of her research, say, you know what, I've looked at other communities, they all say it's a terrible idea, and I'm not recommending it. And if that's the case, then so be it. Thank you. Thank you, Your Worship.
Further comments? Councillor McIntosh, we'll start the speakers list.
Actually, it's Back to the Future. I think many, many years ago, we had one at the end. Those were the days when the council meetings went to midnight, but
That's happened here before, too. Councillor McDonald and Councillor Sabouret.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, I think that it's a good idea, but lest we add so much time that we're here till midnight, maybe the clerk could establish a time limit on the comments. Like I noticed the ones on page 10, I'm sure they were all said in 2 minutes or less. So, just a brief comment would be, with the time limit.
Councillor Sabouret.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm fully supportive of this, and otherwise I wouldn't be seconding it. But at the same time, I've seen it in practice in other municipalities and that stuff. So there's nothing that prevents, like in the clerk drawing this up, that we just give one line or just an advisory as to what it is that we want to see and what we might be saying. And it will help the mayor in judging time and the clerk in judging time as to how long the meeting will be going and that. Also, it might help eliminate some duplication because we would see that indication on the agenda. So 2 or 3 of us might not be all commenting on someone's 60th wedding anniversary or something like that. Who knows? Or the Leafs losing. Not that I'd ever hear anybody say that here.
You're out of order.
That's it, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Further comments? Okay, seeing none, all in favor? Carried, thank you.
Mr. Mayor, it's been brought to my attention that I went a little too fast and skipped over a couple of reports. So we're going to go back to the consent portion of the agenda and deal with those separately. So number 3 was a proclamation for Paramedic Services Week with a recommendation that council proclaim the week of May 21st to 27th, 2023 as Paramedic Services Week in the city of Cornwall.
Motion? Councilor Gardner, seconder. Councilor Good, discussion. Councilor Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's not so much a debate as I'd like to comment on this and support the proclamation based on the unselfish and dedication to keep our residents safe during the worst part of COVID-19. And I want you to see your people and tell them what a wonderful job they did and how they took the chance of being there for people to inject them with the vaccines and their own time that they spent. Thank your people for us, for at least from me, for all the wonderful job that they did. And it comes from Dr. Paul too. I spoke to him today, so thank you.
Further discussion? Councilor Good.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. I don't know if this is out of order, but I would like to also make a comment commending the paramedic services. I know my own mother was very, very ill during the pandemic, not COVID related, but with liver disease end stage. And thanks very much to the good work of the paramedics. In this community, she was brought to the hospital on a number of occasions and has successfully since had a liver transplant and is very healthy. So thank you for their good work in that very, very delicate time when it was not always easy to give people the care that they needed.
Thank you. Further comments? All in favor? Carried. Thank you.
Belford Estates Subdivision Phase 2, Lot 11, Plan 52M61. Part lot control exemption. The action recommended is that part lot control be removed from Lot 11 on Registered Plan 52M61, City of Cornwall, and B, that part of lot control be reinstated on the semi-detached lot in the Belford Estates subdivision, Phase 2, once the subject lot has been created by the appropriate procedure.
Motion? I just need a motion on the table first, Councilor Gunjo. Councilor Bennett, Councilor Sabri, Councilor Gunjo. Okay.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, through you. I'm discussing the motion here, right?
Yes.
Technically, okay. I was just, when I read this, I was wondering if it was connected or linked to a strategy plan to clean or to develop coastal land. Is it any relationship?
Mr. Bola?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, what is being applied for here is really just the severance of semi-detached lot that is shown on page 73. And so if you go to page 73, you'll see that there's a semi-detached lot on the former Cornwall's property. So this is a very large plan of subdivision. This application deals specifically only with that one semi-detached property. And this is an application for removal of part lot control, which is very similar to a consent application, but done at the council level as opposed to the Committee of Adjustment. They're two very similar processes. Sometimes they are done in this manner, sometimes done through consent through the Committee of Adjustment. With the changes in our fees, there is not a major difference between the two. It's just a preference of process.
True, Mr. Mayor, thank you very much. I think it's a good point that we are wishing to this project because it's, as I understand, Cortal land was polluted land. And knowing that we have some project on this land is something good for our community. So I just wanted to raise this point on. So thank you very much for this thing.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried, thank you.
Going back to our new business motions, the second one is waste management strategy, proposed by Councillor Hollingsworth and seconded by Councillor Sabourin. Now therefore be it resolved that administration report on the feasibility of using incineration as part of the City of Cornwall's waste management strategies.
Councillor Hollingsworth.
Thank you, Your Worship. During the election, it kind of came up a few times, and I've heard people discussing it. I realize, we talk about climate change and air quality and those kinds of things. So, and the kind of mindset historically about incinerators is air quality is suspect. But for those of you who were here in the previous council, when I talked to Ms. Kennedy, our kind of resident environmentalist, she suggested that some of the technology is allowed scrubbers or kind of maintain the air quality is actually pretty good compared to what it might have been 20, 30 years ago. The reality is, Your Worship, and I know we talk about diversion, and I don't think anybody here is going to be opposed to that kind of idea, but I believe there are probably some things that just won't be diverted. They're just not divertible, or the community will not get on board no matter how much you try to educate. I know, for example, plastic is not as recyclable as people think that it is. It's not like, depending on polymer compounds and stuff like that. And so sooner or later, there may come a point where our landfill site will potentially have to close. That being said, it is my understanding that approvals for incinerators and the research that needs to take place, and I mean, let's be honest, if you were to talk to somebody about incinerators or ask the community, you'd probably get 20 different versions of what is or what isn't. So what I'm asking for is a report from our experts, our administrators, who know where to go to find out the real information, so that if it comes to a point where we need to say, gee, our landfill site is going to run out of room, is this an option that we as a municipality could pursue based on the facts, not on what we read this week and what's happening on some YouTube video next week, or whatever other medium we potentially perceive. So all I'm asking council for is permission to get administration to put together a report so that when we talk about incineration, we actually know what we're talking about instead of what we think we know what we're talking about. Thank you.
Councillor Good.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. I'm not necessarily opposed with this proposal at all. I think incineration is something that should be reviewed with many other alternatives. What I want to ensure is that we're making the best use of our staff's time. I believe we approved a budget for a biosolids, organics, and septage master plan, which should be happening, if not presently, then very soon. And my question, I guess, to administration, whether Mr. Fothrop or Mr. Romano, it would be, is incineration something that's being explored as part of that report?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, incineration isn't being explored as part of that report. However, if we ever considered, and Mr. Romano may choose to expand on this as well, if we ever considered to an environmental assessment to expand landfill operations, incineration would be an option potentially considered. So it would be an option in an environmental assessment, but in terms of the report, we certainly could bring back a detailed report on incineration, and if there's anything to update council on, we'll include it in that report.
Thank you for that. Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm on the fence about whether or not I support this motion. I think if there's any other information that we can get. If this is a good use of staff time, I absolutely think it's something that we should do. However, if we're, if this does not align with the timeline that we imagine for our landfill, I mean, whatever we can do to remediate it and prolong the life of our landfill, I think is something that we should be considering. It's going to be an unbelievably costly thing to even reimagine what we would do if we have to close down and reopen another landfill, if that's even possible. But I do want to have faith in our staff that that's part of our overall plan. And if it's not, then I support it. But if it's already something that's being considered, I say let's just go with what's happening currently. So perhaps, is there any other insight that you would say as far as exploring this goes?
Yep, through you, Mr. Mayor. So through our current initiatives of alternative daily cover, diverting organics and biosolids eventually, and our IC&I reduction, just off rough high-level numbers, our landfill life's been extended significantly beyond the 2033 initial reporting. So with all those initiatives, we're predicting at least 2040, if not beyond 2045, depending on the numbers we end up getting. So my plan would hopefully be put these initiatives in place, kind of let the dust settle, see where our tonnages and numbers are at, and then do another master plan or environmental assessment, and evaluate what technologies we may need if our landfill needs to close or at that time. Because once our tonnages are down, we kind of need to know what capacity, say we put an incinerator in, what it needs to take on, because there's a lot of operational components with those, so we'd want to know the operational parameters a little more clearly, in my opinion.
Thank you.
2040, 2045 is some good news to hear tonight. Councillor McIntosh, then Councillor McDonald.
Yeah, I want to pick up through you, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Romano. That's really good news. Is this a direct result of our aggressive moves to send less materials to the landfill site?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, right now the big decrease is IC&I. This same duration last year, we're down 65% on IC&I waste. The alternative daily cover, the contractor's ordered. We're still waiting for it to be delivered, so we're still doing estimates on that. And obviously, organics and biosolids, we're awaiting the results of our biosolids and organics and septage master plan.
Even with that news, I had no problem supporting Dean's motion to sort of take a look at incineration. Most council members don't realize he's a bit of an expert around council table. He took part in that infamous trip to Massachusetts 30 years ago to check out the incinerators. We lost 4 on the way back.
I heard it was in the paper. Councillor McDonald.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I support this motion. I think we should investigate everything on any issue. But I just wonder if this isn't something that we might expect a thorough report from the BARC, that consultancy or that program we hired, that multi-page report. So you know what I mean by BARC, do you? Yeah, so would it be reasonable for us to ask them, like, I think they're only starting in 2024, but given the time we have, and they might have the expertise that.
Mr. Fothrop.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we'll use all available resources at our disposal in preparing this report, and
So you don't need to wait for them necessarily?
no.
Okay.
Further comments? Okay, Councillor Ngunjo, Councillor Gardner, then Councillor Sabri.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, thank you very much. To be honest, I'm not going to consider this one because I know a lot about incineration. I'm not going to open the discussion about that because I know what's going on about this technology. It's something to be killed right away in the eggs. Do not consider that for our community. Why? Because this is going to bring a lot of molecules inside our atmosphere. We don't want that here in Cornwall. It's going to be bringing those molecules that are connected or linked with cancers, a lot of diseases. Normally, if you check the number of the incinerators in the planet, they are closing right now. Germany, France, all the countries in Europe who went through this technology are closing, and they are going through other technology based on sorting and clean, zero waste technologies that we have here right now in Canada. So now I'm not supporting this one at all, because I don't want my point of view to bring or to consider it for our community here in Cornwall, because in plus, it's gonna be bringing bad smelling odors here. We know a lot about incineration, and if you go just on 138 across the highway going to Ottawa, every time when you get there, it's smelling because of an incinerator. Cornwall was identify a community connected with smelling odors. I have a lot of my colleagues who are still laughing about our community. We deal with all those problems. We went far away. Please do not return inside, consider this kind of technology for our community. Incineration, no, right away. Thank you.
Councillor Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't always agree with Councillor Hollingsworth, but in this case, I'd like to see some research done on this to find out whether it's feasible or not. I know Ottawa is looking at an incineration and a few other places. And at one time, we had a plant in the west end of the city here, and I don't recall what it was called, but they... MIR, yeah. So it'd be interesting to talk to some of those people to find out whether incineration works or not, or the new technology, is it such that we're not going to dirty our environment? I just want to get that report. Thank you for that, Councillor Hollingsworth.
Councillor Sabri.
Thank you, Your Worship. Once again, I'm supportive of this motion, otherwise I wouldn't have been seconding it. But for me, it's opportunity whose time has come for the community. I know where Councillor Nguju is coming from, but from what I've been seeing that was happening in Europe is these are incinerators that have run their course. They've been in operation for 50, 60 years, but I could be corrected on that information. I will look into it in more detail. But at the same time, I think that we have to address other aspects of incineration and the opportunity to have energy from waste, which is going to be, can be a surplus or byproduct of incineration. Take a look at what's happening in Ontario with regards to its electrical needs. We're not going to be able to meet the demands within the next 4 years as to what is needed by way of power. Just last week, the government of Quebec was informed in the National Assembly that Hydro-Quebec will not be able to meet the needs of their electric demand within the next 4 years as well. So there is an opportunity here to try to look at energy from waste and take advantage of it, and also to ensure the self-sufficiency of the community. So I think this is all part and parcel of incineration and its byproducts and benefits.
Councillor Dupel.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. So I'll support the motion because we're asking for a report, and I would hope, and I know the report will come back with the pros and the cons to it. So I think it's good information for council to have available to them. Sure, I will support the motion.
Any further comments? Okay, Councillor Hollingsworth, I'll allow you to wrap up.
Yeah, I'll be brief. Just a couple points, Your Worship. In 1991, when I first got elected, we talked about putting bag tags at the time, and the majority of council said, oh, we 30-some years in our landfill site, we're good. We don't have to worry about bag tags. We're fine. We don't need to do that. It's kind of politically incorrect. People will go crazy if we have to do it. And then I come back here 20 years later, and now we're talking bag tags because we have no room, or at least at one point, there was no room left in the landfill site. So while 20 years does seem like a long way off, believe it or not, ladies and gentlemen, take it from someone who's kind of experienced it. It goes by faster than you think. The other thing that's noteworthy, when we did go to Connecticut and took a look at that incinerator, which was 30-some years ago, there wasn't any smell. In fact, and Mr. Boileau was with us on that one, perhaps correct me if I'm wrong, but there wasn't smell, there wasn't odor, there wasn't a big black cloud over top of the incinerator, some kind of Mount Doom thing. And so while I'm certainly not going to suggest that it's, perhaps Councillor Ninjo's correct, but my first experience, impression was that that wasn't necessarily the case. The final thing that I want to emphasize to my colleagues is that I'm not telling you I want to go build an incinerator. All I'm saying is that for us to make a decision moving forward, we should know exactly all of the information, pro and con, and if there's incinerators in Germany that are terrible, then yeah, I do want to know that, because no, I don't want to build an incinerator that's going to create toxic gases above the community. Of course, I wouldn't support that kind of an idea. But quite frankly, I just want to know all the facts based on what the experts are telling us. The other thing that's noteworthy is that the science seems to, about anything that we talk about, is constantly changing. What was kind of the mindset 10 years ago is not necessarily the case today, and may not be the case 10 years from now. But at least if we're going to potentially pursue a pattern like this, these things aren't something you do in a couple of weeks. Anytime you look at, we talk about Art Center, what was it, 20-some years. A hockey rink took 28. A new library was 29 years. So even if the council today said, yeah, let's pursue forward with it based on the experience of how governments work, it'll take us 20 years to actually get it kind of to the point where we're cutting the ribbon. So in order for us to even think about it, I need to get the facts. I think it's the prudent thing to do. Thank you, Your Worship.
Okay, calling the vote. All in favor? All opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you.
Bylaws 2023-41 to 48 inclusive, listed on the agenda, are being presented to council for adoption.
Motion, Councillor McDonald. I'll get a seconder before. Seconder, Councillor Bennett. Councillor McDonald.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a question about the first one, and I want to apologize to Ms. Robertson that I missed the last meeting of the, property standards bylaw and all that. But I have a question about the noise bylaw, and if that was discussed at the meeting, I apologize. My question is this, I've heard a lot of complaints from people about people who can add something to their car or take something away from the car so that they make an excessive amount of noise. And I've heard complaints for people who, like on the patio at Schnitzel's and in Le Village at the Daffodil Pub, cars just, really blasting out whatever it is, whether it's an enhancement on their muffler or the removal of their muffler, I don't know. But they can be awfully noisy, and apparently it's a matter of choice. One can turn this off or on. And there are 4 bylaws here that I wonder if that could be scooped up within them. There's 9, causing or permitting excessive noise sound reproduction device. And 13 reads pretty well the same way. And then there's causing or permitting excessive noise motorized conveyance. Would any of those capture the fact that you can set your car up to make an excessive amount of noise and disturb the peace in so doing?
Mr. Bray.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. The bylaw dates from 1996. It's simply being added to the AMPS program that we currently have. As far as to your question about the noise enhancement features, it's a moving violation, so it's a bylaw that exists in the city just to control it. However, bylaw staff wouldn't be able to enforce that part. We would have to rely on police services to assist.
Okay, well, I've heard that the police are authorized to use a device that can measure the decibels, but that it's an expensive machine, and so apparently they don't have it. And I'm just wondering if bylaw would be able to acquire that machine, depending on the price, I don't know how much it is, and then actually be able to react to somebody making excessive noise and disturbing others in so doing.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. The bylaw, there's two ways you can have a bylaw. One is on time, or dates and times that we have in there. There are bylaws, more current ones, that do have a decibel type evaluation method with the device that you're referring to. There are some challenges with that. One is it's a little cost prohibitive. The other one is it's something that needs to be maintained and calibrated, and it from what we're hearing in the bylaw world, it's probably not the easiest thing to enforce. But there is a provision in there for it now. So we can, I say we, the city, as far as police, could be able to assist with that. I don't know how they could respond. I would rather have they speak on that matter, but it is an existing bylaw for that.
Okay, so there's something touching that that's not on these pages? Like,
Well, what's before you is we're just adding existing set fines that were already created
okay.
sometime after the creation of the
Right, 'cause
96
this is in
bylaw.
the context of fines, right?
We're just adding it to our AMPS
Okay.
bylaw.
Okay, well, I won't continue the discussion further, but this could be something that comes back to council to look at, I think. Thank you.
Any further questions, comments? Councillor Good.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. I just have a question in regards to the maintenance of yards. And I know this came before us already, so I probably should have asked it then. But when it comes to, so weeds and grass exceeding 6 inches, obviously we, for no mow may, put an exemption for that bylaw or that specific clause. What I'm wondering is if someone is, or even the municipality wants to naturalize an area, where does that fit into this? And if somebody is taking a portion of their lawn and trying to naturalize it, maybe make like a meadow, you know, which doesn't always look pretty right at the beginning, how does bylaw react to something like that?
Mr. Bray?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. We do have a section in the proposed bylaw for property standards that deals with maintenance of yards and grass and length of is on there. We also have a yard maintenance bylaw. And there is a section that speaks on naturalization. It's something that we've discussed internally that we'd like to maybe have a little bit more, elaborate a little bit more on that process. But there is a provision that does allow for that currently in our yard maintenance. And we do use yard maintenance when we're looking at grass. It's in this bylaw. In case there's other items, we put it all in one order. But if we're just dealing with grass, we would use our yard maintenance bylaw.
Okay, thank you for that. And then I guess my second question is in relation to the fee structure. So if you could walk me through, should there be, let me get back here, sorry, there's so many pages. Whatever, it doesn't matter. Let's say, hypothetically, somebody makes a complaint to bylaw about property standards. I see the fee is $50 for an order. Can you just walk us through, like, what does that look like? And let's say somebody's got tall grass and somebody makes a complaint to bylaw, then what? I'm just trying to see what does this require of bylaw? Two, what would somebody potentially incur in costs for actually rectifying the situation?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So with this bylaw, we are proposing a number of what we'll call user fees that are put in there. Kind of a philosophy that we've been using with multiple bylaws. It's more of a user-based type approach. I know you mentioned yard maintenance and grass. We'll be dealing that with yard maintenance bylaw, but however, if it is a similar type complaint, typically bylaw officers do try to get compliance verbally through discussions. So that wouldn't be a first step, but it is a tool that is there depending on situations to allow us to use this in case we need it. If an order does end up being issued, we do have that option to, but it would be at the officer's discretion.
Okay, thank you for that clarification, because I wasn't sure about that, like if somebody made a complaint and then you have to notify the property owner, but would that notification count as the issuing of a property order, or is it just like a warning, more or less verbal warning? Okay, thank you, I appreciate that. That's it for me.
Further comments? Okay, all in favor? Carried, thank you.
And the last bylaw was pulled for discussion, and that is a bylaw to establish fees and charges for the corporation.
Motion, Councillor McIntosh, seconder. Councillor Bennett, discussion. Councillor McIntosh.
Yeah, there are a couple
special events coverage, ambulance, paramedics, $198, through Mr. Mayor to Beverly. Is that per person or? It's the special events coverage, ambulance and 2 paramedics. The fee is $198. Is that for 3 hours?
Microphone, please, Chief Lister.
Sorry. Yes, it's full ambulance for 3 hours.
Okay, is that what the police call paid duty? Or is
Yeah,
that-
it would be equivalent. Yeah.
Okay, so they're not people that are they're on duty at the time,
No,
so
they'd be
we're
extra
not
duty.
short.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. A couple more here. The open-air burn permits, through you, Mr. Mayor, to the fire chief, I imagine they're breaking down your front door now to pick up permits. Is there a rush to get permits?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, so that actually, it's going quite well. We're working through the applications and people are getting responses within less than 1 week. Currently, just due to the conditions of the bylaw and the yard specifications, many are being denied, unfortunately, but we are processing them as quickly as we get them.
Okay, on that subject, when the fire department gets a call at 11 o'clock at night, neighbor complains, but the guy's burning up whatever he is, you send a truck out there, is there a fee?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So what we will do is when dispatch advises us of the complaint or the call because of the burn complaint, they will advise whether that is a permitted property or non-permitted. If it's non-permitted, they get a warning the first time. After that, then they get charged.
Okay, is that much of a problem?
We haven't experienced a multiple. Once they're advised the first time, we typically don't see it again.
Okay, I got one other, we'll move past escort service owner and operator because some of the kids might still be up. When it comes to the Benson Center rentals, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Jamie, I guess, is there a different fee for teams that are in leagues? I mean, we have minor rates, we have the guys that, the old timers play hockey. Is there a different rate? What would you charge, say, the Colts or any other team?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we have rates for our nonprofit associations. Then we also have our primetime rates and then our non-primetime rates. Outside of that, there are some specific agreements with organizations like the Colts, as well as the Ontario Hockey Academy is another that comes to mind, which those are specific contracts that are brought separately to council for approval that have rate structures within those agreements.
Okay, thanks.
Councillor Good.
My apologies, through you, Mr. Mayor. I was still looking at the fee structure, I think, for the bylaws. So I guess we've passed this now, so my apologies. We're looking at fee structures for recreational and that kind of thing. Okay. I do have a couple of questions. Let me just get to it right here. Why so low interest rate? So it looks like we're charging an interest rate on water tax arrears. Am I on the right page here? Page 8 of user fees and charges under tax and water. We've got a 1.25% interest rate on outstanding taxes and water arrears. I noticed that same rate in another figure a couple pages down. I'm just wondering, given the interest rates that are currently available, is there a reason why we're charging such a low interest rate on outstanding taxes?
Ms. Bailey?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, actually, it's 1.25% per month.
Okay.
So it's quite a high interest rate.
I see. Thank you for that. If I may, Mr. Mayor, to continue, I have a few questions. Overnight parking, I'm seeing that that's $3 per night. I'm just wondering what the rationale is behind including that.
Mr. Fawthorpe?
I think I will ask either Ms. Robertson or Mr. Bray to comment.
Ms. Robinson?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. That was a option that came up with the working group, for the parking working group, about a couple of years ago. They wanted an option for people to be able to park downtown at night. So that's a one-time $3 overnight parking. in case someone wanted to leave their vehicle in the downtown core after spending some time downtown at night.
If I may, I wonder of feasibility of actually implementing that. So if somebody were to go, let's say, downtown, have a few drinks, we don't charge anything for parking after 5 o'clock. So they stay till 1, maybe they shut down the bar, maybe 2. I think it's 2. I don't know anymore. Like at what point do the officers go out? Is it 3, 4 in the morning and then it's determined overnight? I'm just wondering like the application of that. I wouldn't want someone to get hammered when they're getting hammered. No.
Actually, it would be for the next morning.
It would be for the next one.
Yes,
Okay, thank you.
exactly.
Okay, I apologize if it's okay. I have a number of questions about the fee structures. I was looking at the bike rental fees that we have here. This is on page 31 or 313 of the package. $8.85 for 1 hour of a bike rental, $22.12 for 4 hours, or $30, almost 31, we'll say. Actually, even more than that, sorry, that's before tax. So $10 an hour, $25 for 4 hours, and $35 for a full day. I am concerned about this. I understand that we've made an investment on our bicycles. I think if we want to actually encourage people to use them and make best use of our paths, especially when we have tourism coming in, to me, these fees are unreasonably high. I don't know if this matches, I've previously lived in Montreal and Ottawa where they have bike rentals there. You can just go and rent a bike. This seems much, much, much higher than what we'd be looking at in other cities. I'm wondering where these numbers came from.
Mr. Falthrope?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to be honest, I can't necessarily say where the numbers came from. It's a program was implemented probably a few years ago, run out of the marina. All I could say, I suppose, is that it's intended to really serve a lot of our marina clients that are coming by boat, and we haven't, received negative feedback about the program, but I'm sure customers would welcome paying less, but from our perspective, I don't know that we see that as being necessarily a deterrent.
I don't know if any of these, if I may, procedurally, how much of this is up for discussion. Looking at these fees, they, in my estimation, are much too high. They're not accessible for a very real demographic of the population who would actually want to rent a bike for a day or a couple of hours. I would like to request or make a motion that we look at reducing these fees. I have a few fees that I feel are too high, frankly.
There is currently a motion on the table. A motion to defer is always in order.
Procedurally, how would one in our position go about making suggestions to amendments to some of these fees? If I may, Miss Clerk, Madam Clerk.
Madam Clerk?
I think a deferral in order to get more information may be the proper way to go, Mr. Mayor. A lot of these fees have been previously approved, and so to go back now would need a reconsideration.
I'd like to make a motion to defer then, if that's okay.
Is there a seconder for the motion to defer? Councillor Dupel. We're now debating the deferral. Mr. Paulo, you want to make comments?
Yeah, I was just going to briefly indicate that sometimes, and perhaps with the bike rentals, and I'm not sure, but we could certainly look at it, but what we don't like to do is undercut the private sector who are doing the same thing. And I suppose you're saying that we're going to be a lot higher than they are. I'm not sure that that's the case, but we can look into it.
Thank you for that feedback. I'm not suggesting that we would be higher than private rentals, but I'm suggesting that other municipalities that provide bike rentals are providing them at a significantly lower cost. I would want us to be comparable to what other municipalities are charging for bike rentals. I think this is something that should be accessible to everyone, and that's a significant amount of money. There are a few fees here that I think are too high. So I'm going to look at the aquatic center pool rentals. I understand that we have to recover our costs here, but if you look at what it costs for an hour of swimming versus an hour of skating, it's 2.5 times the price. If you're a family of 5, you're dropping $25 if you can even get in. It is quite expensive, and I get that a child is like 75 cents 82 cents cheaper, but it's still quite expensive. And I think that this is prohibitive to a lot of our low-income families who deserve to be able to have access to some of these recreational amenities. So this is part of my deferral. I think a lot of these are in line, but there's so many fees in here, and there were a number of them that, as I was reviewing this, felt as though they were not accessible to a significant portion of our population, and I think that that's something that we should really consider. Thank you.
Further debate on the deferral? Councillor McIntosh.
Just, the deferral is to look at the fees, but which fees in particular? Sarah mentioned a number of fees. Are we going to say this fee, that fee, or are we just going to machine gun approach?
Well, the entire item is being deferred, Councillor McIntosh,
Yeah.
so it's fair game. Everything in there is fair game if it's deferred. I don't think that the specific fees have to be specified for the deferral. The entire item is being deferred.
Okay, so we send it back to administration and they go through and they say, well, we had second thoughts. We're going to reduce the fee, and that is the case of reduce it to what?
Well, it should be coming back to council for discussion prior to that. Madam Clerk?
If I may, Mr. Mayor, perhaps a good suggestion would be for those questions to go to the managers, and we can collate some type of response for every fee that was questioned. No. You're writing.
So that would happen external to the meeting?
Yes, exactly.
Okay, thank you. Further debate on the deferral? All in favor of the deferral? Okay, all opposed to the deferral? Deferral carries. Thank you.
Next is our confirming bylaw, so we're looking for a motion to to adopt that bylaw.
Motion, Councillor Gardner, Councillor Bennett, all in favor? Carried, thank you.
Not a good track record tonight. Are there any reports from standing, advisory, special, and haddock committees of council?
Council? Councillor Gunjo?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. It's not a report, but I would like to rise up a matter that I have faced these few days. It's about security. Few residents contact me because their car was stolen from guys I hear coming from, I don't want to, Montreal. And they called the police, but unfortunately the police could not show up at time. And the resident followed the stolers, but the police officer unfortunately could not show at time. So I want to ask if there is a way to have a discussion with the police department, since we were supposed to discuss about how they're gonna help the traffic speed to be low. So I think we have few items that we'd like to discuss with them. Is it a way? Can we put that in the agenda for a discussion with the police department? Is it technically possible?
It is possible through a new business motion or a notice of motion. But we need the proposal and in writing, and we need a mover and a seconder.
Right now, or?
You could put it in writing for the next meeting.
Okay.
Was that acceptable?
Yes.
Any further comments? Okay. Seeing none, motion to adjourn. Counselor Hebert, Counselor Bennett, all in favor? All right, thank you, council. Good night. Bonsoir.